Ever try to do live videos on the cuff? God, I swear. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, are you ready? Here goes. So, it appears that I've pulled on some strings with some people, some organizations, and I've been called on the carpet, so to speak. It isn't the first time, really. I was really kind of skeptical about doing this before. But you know what? At this point in time, I think I'm ready. Or at least I'm going to try to be ready. I'd like to talk to you guys about activism today. I've done it before. I've written about it on my website. And there are a few things that I want to share. I'm coming to you as somebody that has spent some time doing it. And I'd really just have some thoughts. Some of you can differ in your thoughts with me, but I want to be able to share your perspective since there are so many people that have asked me what my perspective is. And my unwillingness to share it via text message somehow is Orwellian because I was asking these groups what the hell they're doing. I've mentioned in previous videos asking people what the hell we're doing. And the method behind my madness is this. I'm seeing more apathy than I've ever seen in my lifetime. Of course, I wasn't paying attention until almost 20 years ago or whatever. But something is really eerily weird to me right now. And there are certain things that I think people should be aware of that they're not aware of. Maybe somehow I've been in the boat too long. If I have been, you can tell me. But it's important that we discuss this issue. The problem with this particular organization is that it has no leadership. So how am I supposed to communicate with a leaderless organization that actually really does have a leader, even though they say they don't? How am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to be able to share my ideas that I believe could be beneficial to other people if nobody's really listening, because we're just going to continue to do it this way? No matter how successful or unsuccessful it really is. Well, we've always done it this way. We're going to continue to do it this way, and that's just the way we are. It's like, really? Well, if you don't have any leadership, you don't have anybody analyzing the success or the issues with the organization that you're trying to build, do you? So what do you need? You need leadership. Period. I'm not saying it because I want to lead. I don't. All I'm saying is you need leadership. It's tried and true understanding in everything you look at. Whether you have a corporation, ever try to run a corporation without leadership? Ever try to run a military without leadership? Ever try to do the committees of correspondence without leadership? How about the militia? Will that work without leadership? How about a school district, a school board, county commissioners, local government, state government, federal government? You think you can do that without leadership? We might want to think about that. If we're not leading and we're allowing the chickens to run around with their heads cut off, not a good plan, especially if it looks like they're not achieving any type of success. Okay? Can we just agree on that right now? This isn't to condemn anybody. This is about you and I talking about what's important in order to save our country. Some of these things that I'm actually not finding anybody else talk about. So if I happen to be the first one mentioning it, I actually don't mind. And I'm hoping that I'm actually going to be seen by some of these people that I appear to be condemning, is that I'm trying to do it from the love of my heart to say, for God's sakes, what the hell are we doing? If we are truly liberty people, then there are certain things that we need to consider. Okay? One of them is leadership. People are like, Tom, what's the plan? It's like, well, if you don't have a leadership, why are you asking me? Do I look like the plan guy? Do I got to come up with the plans for you? And isn't it Orwellian, ironically, for you to be able to ask me what my plan is when you're not interested in my plan because you're not interested in leadership? Wouldn't that make me a leader? I think it kind of would. Well, inconsistency is a problem that I've had, you guys, and I've talked about it all the time. We don't like inconsistency in our leadership. We don't like inconsistency in the way our car runs. We don't like inconsistency at all. And yet we say that, but our actions are actually different than what we actually say, aren't they? So we need leadership. What's the next thing we need? Well, we need a plan, right? So what's the plan? Well, you actually pick out what those agenda items are and you focus on those plans. My organization, for example, has certain agenda items that we focus on. There's a long litany of them, and everything that we do is connected to them. So arguably, everything that we're dealing with could be an agenda item. Well, Tom, if we have too many people focusing on one thing, isn't that going to go sideways? Well, no, not really. And the reason why is because we can't get people off the couch now. Which brings me to probably the most important issue that we need to consider. Now, the organization I work for, many of you know what organization that is, heavily talks about recruiting as its number one item. Why? Because you need people. You can't go and flip off cops at a court hearing and then get arrested and then think somebody's going to come to your rescue. Besides, what is the perception of what that looks like anyway? Which is another issue. Do you want to be, are you so focused on the rights of the people and people's violations that you're willing to get arrested for what? And the irony, again, behind this is you're going to fight for people's rights, so you're going to get arrested, right? Because you don't think that they should be part of the system or that the system's corrupt. Meanwhile, you just entered into the system. This is like the Hotel California. You can come in, but you can't ever leave. And they're going to end up sucking you dry because the attorneys and all of that stuff are going to make you pay so dearly that you're going to wish you never got involved. So how successful is that? Not. It's not successful. If people do not understand the methodology behind the actions that you have, you're going to end up losing an audience. You're not going to be gaining one. Credibility. What does it look like? Does your group look like a bunch of a loose Democratic majority of ankle-biting chihuahuas that are just kind of randomly going off doing their own thing because it looks like they don't have any leadership, because they don't have any leadership, and thinking somehow you're going to be successful? I witnessed 200 people showing up at a meeting, and within 2 meetings, that meeting was gone. Why? Because of the way that the leadership that decided to run that meeting, even though they're not leadership, and what they had to do. They decided to be able to not understand the audience and preach to the audience about what they need to do to try to get them to buy in. They decided to go off because I don't know the evidence that supplied this conspiracy theory, I'll call it. But if I can't buy into that, how are people that are just regular people that are concerned about our country going to get any sort of buy-in into what this is? You've got an incredibly large group of people that you have that are malleable to understanding what you're talking about, to become a way to become more successful. But if you look like a bunch of frantic lunatics, you're not going to get a buy-in from those people. If you're doing things that the average person doesn't want to do, like getting arrested all by yourself or screaming F off at the cops and then calling for a prayer vigil, I mean, what do you think people are going to think about who you are and what you do? How is that going to work? People say, oh, well, confrontational politics, Tom. People are just not listening. Well, people aren't listening for one simple reason. And I don't know why, if nobody gets this, maybe people have talked about it and I haven't before, or other people have talked about it before. But you need people. If we understand that this is an interest to be able to work a ground game to overcome the narrative of the government media collusion. Do we get that? Are we doing that? No. Well, the exception is this last election that I've talked about. I have seen more people become active, at least on the local level, focusing on local elections. I don't know what they're going to do after that, and I hope they do. But more people hit the ground running and put pamphlets and information in people's doors like no other time I've ever seen in my life. And it may not have yielded the desired results for the election, but I'll tell you what it did do. It helped inform people. The other thing to consider when we're going to be active is what kind of tracking mechanism do we have? Are we dealing with a bunch of people that are going to get offended when they get called out for what the hell they're doing? Like I got called... Like I'm calling people out, or they, oh, it's offensive. I don't know. I might have to block them from Facebook or social media. Or can we actually have the discussion like grown people, since the failure of us coming together is going to directly affect my kids and yours? Can we have that discussion right now? I'm thinking maybe we should. What we need leadership. Why do you need leadership? Because leadership provides a hierarchy. It provides a way to be able to keep people focused on the issues at hand. What it also does, it does something that I'm not seeing anybody else doing either. And that is holding people accountable. Yes, your own people. You need to hold your own people accountable. Why? Because if you don't, they're not going to do anything. If you delegate something to little Johnny over there, and little Johnny says that he's going to do something, he's going to say that he's going to do that in an emotional state because he's being held, because he's been called out in public. What's going to happen after that? Johnny may not show up to the next meeting. Why? Because he's either weak or he's scared or for some other reason. But don't you think we ought to know what that reason is? We need a constant outreach one-on-one with the members. You have to understand who your members are. You don't need to just help them with, with ham radios and help them how to prep. That's openly admitting defeat. It's fine that you understand that there's a coming famine and these kinds of things. Those are important. But do not make that your only focus, because what you're going to do then is you are not giving people hope. People are automatically preparing to give up. Now, all of a sudden, we have a complete culture, at least in Idaho, where everybody has decided that they want to give up, or a lot of people have, and people in these groups and these chats are openly admitting people are walking away. Why are they walking away? Because they realize at this point, if they're going to be part of a group that has some sort of dysfunctional leadership or no leadership at all, why should they be involved in anything? Well, maybe what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and just back away from this because I don't know where I fit. I don't really know stuff. I'm not really well educated. I understand kind of what the problem is. I know I'm scared for sure. I have issues with anxiety. I have this and that and the other. And I don't really know who I'm going to align with. And I don't really know anybody personal in the movement that will help me along, that I can talk to help me become a little stronger in what I'm doing. The other thing to consider here too is tracking. If you're going to have your leadership, which you obviously need, I mean, Doug knows about leadership. Can you imagine, Doug, being in part of a group without leadership in your profession? There's no way. There's no way that's going to work. So what you need is you need a way to be able to you need leadership, right? I said that already. And I'm saying this redundantly on purpose. You need members. You need recruiting. You need a ground game. You need people that if they don't know what else to do, you make them hit the ground. Whether you have to go to the election place and you have to pick out precincts and you got to do whatever, what you do is you get that map. For example, you look at all of the homes that are on there and you mark them out. You mark them who are your friendlies, who took your information, who's like you, who's not like you. And then what you do is you start using that information that you have. You find people that aren't like you, you make notations of that, and now all of a sudden you're on a mission. You're starting to track what's going on so that you can understand where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. One of the things I'd suggested before is using an Excel spreadsheet. I know it's difficult. I don't like doing it either. But I have friends that actually help me do it. And now I kind of know how to do it, and it's kind of cool. You could even do college ruled paper if you could still write. Just don't write cursive. What you have to do is you have to track an issue. So, for example, if we're going to have this thing where we had, let's say, HB 100, whatever it is, right? We're going to look at a House bill. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a spreadsheet with all of the House members, all of the Senate members, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and actively call and email each one of them. And then when we get a response from each one of them, we're going to go ahead and notate that. Who visited them, what kind of information they got, blah, 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 right? Then you find the people that are like you, just like I was telling you before, and you use those for your strengths, right? Then what you do is you discard the ones that are not your strengths or the ones that oppose what you do. And then you work out with your friendlies a way to be able to apply enough pressure to those that sort of need to be encouraged to come along and see the method of our madness, right? But that can be done in a multitude of different ways. People are like, Tom, what do we do about the FBI and the IRS? And, oh my God, we're losing our country and nobody's going to do anything. Nobody's doing anything because they're making excuses. This is your country we're talking about. And unless people are under the 2 Thessalonians 2:11 strong delusion, which I believe they are, maybe they just need to be approached in a different way. Hence the increase in my tone. Somebody could say, oh, well, Tom Mudge, you're kind of an extreme. It's like, you know what? At what point do I earn the right to be able to say things the way I see them? At what point do I get to be able to not only do that with people that are not friendly to me, but to you, my friends? Why can't we hold each other accountable and you could say, you know, Tom, you shouldn't have said S on the radio. Or you couldn't have done this or that. Should I not know you well enough to be able to go, oops, sorry? Or should I say, oh, you offended me, I'm going to delete you from Facebook? I mean, this is the infighting garbage that's going on in every liberty movement, in every place I've ever been, in all of Idaho, in my 5-state area. If all of this stuff is happening at one time, we have to be cognizant of it. It's not just the Democrats that are brainwashed. It's not just the Republicans that are brainwashed. We are all brainwashed to some degree. And it's time to keep our head on the swivel to be able to understand exactly what is going on so that you can tell whether you're seeing things for the way they are or you're seeing things in some sort of delusional way that isn't based in anything. The other important thing about groups and activism and things is they have to be educated. Our organization, for example, focuses on history. Why? Because we need to understand history so that when we're dealing with current events, we know when we're repeating those mistakes. People aren't interested in history. And I believe they're not interested in history because they were never taught, like I was, how that affects me. If I understood how history affects me, not somebody sailing, God forgive it, not dates and times, right? But why what somebody did affects me today? Why? That's an important thing to know. We're not teaching history, right? People are too busy to read history. They don't want to know about history. Civil rights has got to be about slavery, right? And the government would never do anything wrong, right? And vaccines must be good, right? The other thing that we focus on is current events. We focus on current events because we want people to be informed on the truth that people are not talking about. We're trying to overcome the media government narrative. In order to do that, there has to be more of us than them. If this is an information war, it's simple, isn't it? If the information war is held by the people that currently hold the information, and those are the ones that are disseminating the information, wouldn't that conclude to the average soul that, maybe we need to do something more to overcome that narrative? Not just complain about it. The media is just a lying bunch of libtards, and I don't even know what to do. This is what I'm hearing in the liberty movement. And they're like, oh, well, Ammon Bundy's going to fix it, or Trump's going to fix it. It's like, yeah, that's what we want. We want to be able to reinitiate the 13th Amendment, right? We want to be able to help people understand that titles and nobility really should be part of our Constitution. And somehow, in the name of not supporting the experts, which we know not to do, like from Dr. Fauci, we really do want to be able to support the experts, don't we? I mean, that's ultimately really what we want to do. And ultimately, like I said in my previous video, we want a king. Because if we don't, we sure act like we do. Because we're expecting other people to do things for us that we should be doing ourselves. Activism doesn't work that way. Activism works as you doing actions. You become part of an organized collective. Well, collectivism, Tom, there you go. You must be a closet communist. Really? Is it okay to be able to discuss some of the successes that our enemy is having and to be able to acknowledge the fact that they've been brilliant in the entire plan that they've put about us for the last 200 years? Can we merely suggest that, you know what, maybe collectivism, at least in that regard, or coming together or unifying or whatever you want to say, less the hand, the fist, maybe that would be successful. Maybe we could get groups that would actually say, you know what, I'm focusing on vaccines and I'm focusing on, health mandates. I'm on this thing or I'm on that thing. Can we at least agree that we're in trouble? Can we at least agree that there are big issues? Can we agree maybe on what those big issues are? Can we maybe agree on some of these small issues and to begin to advance this ball forward? A small issue to me is September 1st. Brad Little's calling a extra spectacular special session or whatever he calls it, so he can grandstand on an election season, so he can implement socialism in the state of Idaho, and he's going to try to baffle everybody with BS. And I'm guessing that there aren't going to be enough people there that actually give a damn. If you are not there and you don't have a legitimate excuse, and I'm not buying most of it, then I would argue that you don't care enough. If the people that can go and are planning on going are not encouraging other people to go, that's your fault. That's my fault. If recruiting is our number one issue and we have an information war and we know that we need more of us than them, then everything should be focused primarily in several issues. One of them is getting people informed, educating yourself, educating other people, getting other people active, acting like you mean it, not just complain and not just hand it over to Ammon Bundy or Brad Little and go, oh, save us. I was reading a thing and I did a video on it about socialism, about how anytime a nation goes into decline, there's a point in time where they wish for a king again. And if people understood history and they understood current events, they would know this. But why don't they know this? And then you have people that are defending their position. Well, we don't have a leadership organization on purpose. It's like, I don't give a crap. If you have something that's on purpose, it doesn't mean it works. Sometimes you do stuff and something is unorganizedly challenged organizationally, and it doesn't mean it works. But if you don't have leadership or anybody that's intelligent enough to analyze the situation as you go along and say, okay, this is where we are after 6 months. This is where we are after a year. This is where we are after 2 years. If we don't have somebody that's analyzing that situation, you know, if you try to run a business that way, you'd screw your business. Well, I don't know. I don't know how many sales I have. I don't know how many I need. I guess I don't really need to know who my audience is. I guess I don't really care what the product is. I guess I don't really need to know if there's any saturation in the market that might hinder my ability to become more successful. I mean, can you imagine? So we're playing this little baby game about, well, we just don't want to have any leadership because that's the way it works. It doesn't work. And why am I hammering on this group? Why am I hammering on it? Because I believe that the platform that these people are operating on is one of the finest platforms available. That's why. And I believe knowing that, and if we could tweak this thing to a certain degree, they could become a force to be reckoned with. They would have to overcome the public perception that they have, which quite honestly, I'm not even interested in. And if I'm not even interested in it, and I know some of those people, and some of those were my longtime friends, and I don't know if we're still friends now, but they're starting to get offended because I'm calling them out because they know they're a disorganized group, even though they were created to be that way. I don't know what anybody else is doing. But people have asked me and asked me and asked me and asked me, what's your plan, Tom? Well, you know what? The plan number one is recruiting people. It's creating an organized ground game. It's determining a goal. It's determining a way to achieve that goal. It's a way to monitor the goal. And it's a way to be able to track the progress of what we're doing so that we can see if we're achieving that goal. How's that for generalities? Now, I'm not the activist extraordinaire as apparently some people think I am. I'm just somebody that gives a crap. And honestly, I've never heard anybody talk about this before. And maybe I'm not paying attention, but you know what? To be honest, I don't know that I want to pay attention anymore. It isn't because I'm scared of all of the things that are happening. I'm scared about the people that are claiming to do something about it, that are continually unsuccessful and so narrow-minded that they think what no success is success. That's like saying slavery is freedom, for crying out loud. If we need to be able to talk about specifics relating to activism, those can all be done. But who's going to do it? By a bunch of people that are everywhere in their education. Some of them can't even spell Constitution, much less understand, the difference between the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Some people don't even know what the Articles of Confederation is or why we ended up getting the Constitution in the first place. A whole ton of people have no idea what's coming to the Idaho legislature in January when the state plans to call an application for an Article 5 convention. We got globalism that is going completely rampant, and the only thing people can focus on is wind farms. We've got CRT, and people are focusing on trying to be able to get people into the school bonds, and that's a good thing, but they don't understand the bigger picture behind why this is happening. Do you think that's important? Part of activism is important in not only understanding the internal workings of the issue that you're dealing with, but you have to understand the driving mechanism. If you do not understand the driving mechanism, You might ought to. We're in the middle of a global conspiracy. We can finally say it openly because Klaus Schwab's openly said you're going to eat, all of this. And there's a major cockroaches, and there's going to be this major transformation. We know that famine is coming. Some people are prepping. But what are we doing about informing other people? Do we not realize that if 1% of the population is prepped and ready to go, isn't there kind of a major disconnect in making sure that other people know what's coming too? Isn't there a way that we could reach out to other people to be able to help them understand? No, we don't want to. What we want to do is we want to rip people's heads off for questioning the authority of the existence of a group that could have the possibility of doing some really great things. But they're in their own way. Now, granted, we've all got problems in our own groups. I'm not saying that that's not true. I'm just telling you, some of us are shackled and bound, some of us more than others, and some of us actually have things to say beyond what that looks like, which is what I'm sharing with you today. I think it's important. The one other thing that's really super important too is this. I think what do we have? I have never seen so many liberty groups, and they all say they want to do something different, and they're all focusing on local elections, which is weird enough as it is. All that being said, they did launch a pretty good ground game. It was pretty impressive. I love to talk about it. It's a great example to be able to show what's going on. But why is it that if we are all realizing the dangers of liberty, why is it that we're not willing to come together on this? Is it really all about, I'm going to focus on this group because I believe in it, even though they're not doing anything? It's like, okay, time is of the essence. In case people aren't paying attention, things are worse now than they were before. They're worse now than they were yesterday. They're worse now than they were the day before yesterday, and so on and so forth. Things are going to continue to get worse. So, logic would tell me, if things are going to get worse, then we need to work harder, or we need to work harder to get more people informed. Right? If you have a flood, for example, and it's going to come flood your house, and you got one sandbag, is that enough? Hell, if you got 100 sandbags, is that enough? What if you're the only guy that's dealing with the sandbags? Is it any different? It's not. It's not. What we need to do is remember something too. The other thing I wanted to point out is the importance of virtue. Okay? I talked about it in the previous video. Any nation that deviates from being a virtuous nation begins to decline. Period. If we are going to be in public and we are going to start freaking out and using F-bombs and looking and scaring people to death and all of that, I know I have my own thoughts on this too. It's like, well, how long do I have to be quiet and docile before people get it? I totally get it. The question is are we doing enough to try to offset that understanding to get people on board? Can we be consistent in our worldview? Can we learn to talk to understand the audience that we're speaking to? Can we learn to understand what their hot button issues are? Can we make this more about them than about us? I'm talking about group leaders. Can we help them and build relationships and help them understand that they are part of something else? There is a gang mentality within us, right? We all like to be loved and we like to be part of another organization. But what I really think that we like is we like to not only be part of something else, we enjoy family. I think that's a lot of people, why people join into gangs, right? And dysfunctional families, is because they feel like they're part of something. Well, let me ask you something. If you're part of a dysfunctional family, are you feeling like you're part of something? And if that group mimics a dysfunctional family, are you not in a dysfunctional family? And if you're in a dysfunctional family and you're starting to see things not operate the way they're supposed to, don't you think it's time to be able to try to question the motives of where you are and try to look into some of these other options? And I think one of the beauties about the liberty movement, and Idaho could do this. I mean, Idaho's not known for hardly anything other than being the most Republican state in the union. What we need to do is to be able to rise up like no other nation ever has. We need to talk to all of these liberty groups, and we need to talk about the fact that we are in this to restore liberty. What is it that you need? What is it that you need? What is it that you need? And what is it that you need? Because there are times where we are all going to stand together. Are we? No. The special session is going to be, it'll be a good test for us. But yet people are like, well, what are we going to do on 9/1? What about show up? Can you show up? If you can't show up, can you call relentlessly and email relentlessly and make sure that you use your mouth? Don't bring firearms and don't act like a moron. Don't wave your freaking AR-15 and say, oh, you can pry it from my cold dead hands. That stuff is garbage. You have the Second Amendment right, but I don't know that there was any provisions that our founding fathers said is you should go to rallies and start waving your gun in the air like you just don't care. Act a little bit professional. Understand where you're walking into. Understand how you're going to be perceived. Understand the message that you want to send. But how are you going to do that if you have everybody running around with a completely different message? People now are overwhelmed, and it's probably because they realize that the liberty movement is so fractured. No way are we going to end up joining hands together. But we have infighting within the groups, for crying out loud. Well, I don't really like the way they look. That guy's got a gray beard, and I don't know. And he said frickin' that one time, and I really don't like that. It's like, are people more concerned about what's coming out of my mouth and some of your mouths than they are about what the government's doing to them? And if they are, don't you think you need to set the record straight? And finally, I'm reminded of biblical scripture. I'm reminded of the Great Commission in Matthew 28. I'm reminded that our job as Christians is not to... Our job is to be able to love the Lord with all our mind, heart, soul, and strength, and all of that stuff, okay? That's all good. But what are you going to do once you know that? You reach out to other people. So is there a biblical significance to the liberty movement in successful activism? I would argue that there definitely is. If we educate ourselves first, if we save ourselves first, then we begin to start educating other people, and we start saving other people. We need to start saving souls for Christ. We need to start saving souls for this country to prevent them from starving to death. And really, it's in our hands. It's in the people's hands. It's not Biden. It's not Obama. It's not Trump. It's not Bundy. It's not any of these people. It's your hands. You have the ability to make or break your country. You have the ability to be able to reach out to other people in a way that nobody else can. You have a way to be able to become part of the solution or part of the problem, and the choice is yours. And so I hope that you guys found some benefit in this. I did shoot from the hip. I have to go back and listen to it and find out if I need to delete it or not. But be it as it is. I'm a true man of my word. I say what I mean. I try to mean what I say. If I'm incorrect in anything I'm saying, I'm not beyond reproach. So please feel free to contact me. But our country's in trouble. And I don't know how nice I can say this and for how long before people will finally start getting off the couch.